thought I filmed a content warning, but apparently I didn't, so I'm just gonna do that now. This video contains a lot of mental health topics, so if that's not something that you can handle right now, by all means, just move away. But I love you, and I'll just see you in another video, okay? I don't want to trigger anybody. Every time that I step away from a conversation, my brain immediately starts replaying everything that I just said to figure out if I could have possibly hurt the other person in the conversation. Like, I am always worried that I might have offended someone or made them angry at me or just done something generally morally wrong, which means I'm very cautious about what I say in person over text or in the videos that I put out online. Like, even in my art or my writing or my music, I'm triple checking that I didn't do anything that's considered morally wrong, because if I think that I have, then I feel like I don't deserve to be here, which is not logical at all, but that's just how my brain is wired now. My brain doesn't think I'm allowed to talk about this, so let me just put a disclaimer that these are my experiences. This is not me speaking for everyone who suffered from moral scrupulosity, okay? This is my experiences, okay? Okay. That doesn't really make me feel much better, but I'm still gonna make this video because I think it's important to talk about. Because I didn't know a name for this until a couple months ago, and like before that, I didn't know how to find any coping strategies because I didn't know that it was an actual thing. I just thought I was weird. I mean, I am weird, but I have seen a professional about this, okay? And they told me that this is likely moral scrupulosity, which is kind of like OCD surrounding morals. It's basically when you become obsessed with doing the right thing, and if you feel like you've reached your moral... I didn't like my original explanation, so I'm trying again. I can do better. And in case it wasn't obvious, I am not a professional. I am just Quinn. If you think you might have moral scrupulosity and you want help with it, please consult a professional. All the information I'm about to reiterate to you comes from sources that I will put on the screen and also below if I can actually figure that out. I'm citing it in APA because my moral scrupulosity told me to do so, or else I'd be a bad person. It's not logical, I know. Moral scrupulosity is a manifestation of OCD, meaning it's not its own disorder, it's just kind of a presentation of OCD. Moral scrupulosity is very commonly associated with other types of OCD, like in my case, I'm pretty sure that mine is connected to harm OCD. And just like other forms of OCD, your brain kind of gets stuck in this cycle of obsessions. And in this case, the rumination cycle is triggered after doing something that the brain perceives as breaching your moral integrity or something of that nature. So your brain might keep telling you you're a bad person, why did you do that, or what you did was bad, something along those lines. And the compulsions are meant to get rid of the rumination cycle, however, they're not normally the most healthy. With moral scrupulosity, some of the most common compulsions are like reassurance seeking or apologizing a whole lot, or in my case, it's self-punishment. It's kind of like I have to do my compulsions to make up for what I've done. And most of the time, when I do my compulsions, I didn't actually hurt the other person. I just think that I might have. It's confusing. It doesn't make sense. But that's kind of how mental illnesses work, isn't it? So I'm going to start with talking about where my moral scrupulosity stems from, because I feel like that might be helpful for other people to kind of figure out maybe where theirs comes from. I'm going to talk about how it affects my daily life. And finally, I'll end with how I cope. And spoiler alert, I don't cope that well, but I do have strategies that I'm trying. So, similar to most mental disorders, my moral scrupulosity stems from childhood. I grew up thinking that love had to be earned and like you have to be useful in order to be worth something. I thought that if I did something wrong, that whoever liked me at the time would stop liking me. Another thing that set me up for this specific type of OCD was that my mistakes were never like repairable as a kid. People disliked me like my whole childhood kind of came from me being autistic and disabled. And if I said something that people didn't like, they'd hold that against me like forever. So right now, my current fear is being seen for only my mistakes because as a kid, that was my reality. But here's the thing, okay? I wasn't actually doing anything wrong. People were just blaming me for their own dislike for me. And because I didn't really understand I was being bullied, I thought that they were right and that everything I did was indeed wrong. But then there were a few incidents where I actually did do something wrong. It was accidental, obviously. And then I punished myself for it, and then people noticed that and came over to comfort me and kind of reassure me that everything was okay. And that's where the dangerous cycle started, where I felt like I did something wrong, so I would self-punish to make up for it, but then people went back to ignoring me, and because I was being ignored, it felt like I was still doing something wrong, so the cycle just continued constantly. And what's even worse about all of this is that my moral scrupulosity doesn't want me to tell people that I'm struggling, because in my head, me telling people that I'm struggling is going to make them struggle as well. Not logical. So it affects my daily life quite significantly, but I didn't realize by how much until I actually sat down to write this list. I did record myself talking about this list, however, the OCD is screaming at me that I'm not allowed to talk about it, so the best I can do is just show you the list. So you can pause the screen if you want to read it, but if you don't, then just continue. In short, I try to be perfect all the time because it hurts so much to think that I might have hurt someone. So I just avoid it at all costs. But of course you can't avoid things like that forever, because inevitably everyone hurts other people by accident. And sometimes me thinking about that is beneficial to my overall performance, because like it prevents me from missing deadlines. Like I'm always like handing things in on time and doing my best job at work. My brain is convinced that people will start hating me after just one mistake, which I know isn't true, okay? I'm aware that this is not the right way to think. I'm always worried that my friends are gonna start harboring resentment against me because of one thing and then another thing, and they're never gonna tell me. And then one day they'll just blow up at me. I guess what I'm trying to say is that I constantly feel like people are upset with me, even when it's not my fault that they're upset. Or sometimes they're just not upset at all, but I think that they are because they're behaving slightly differently. And I hate that, because I don't want to be like fragile. I don't want people to have to walk around on eggshells, which is exactly why I don't typically tell people that I struggle with this, except now the internet's gonna know. And when I get caught up in a rumination cycle, or like a moral scrupulosity cycle, whatever you want to call it normally lasts for days. Like the first 24 hours, I am in panic mode. It's like an anxiety attack that does not go away. I'm not able to eat properly. I will not be sleeping. I probably am not functional. Like I can't be productive. I'm just kind of sitting there shaking in a corner because I don't know what to do with myself. The second day, I'm able to kind of push it out of my mind a little bit. It's normally by the third day that I'm productive again. And all the while, I'm fighting the self-destructive urges that my brain is convinced will make up for what I've done, even though I probably haven't actually done anything wrong. Now on to section 3, which is how I cope, which is not well. But we're gonna ignore all my unhealthy coping strategies and just talk about the good ones. Art is probably my most useful coping strategy, whether it be through music or poetry or short stories or my novels. Sometimes when I'm too tired to start thinking creatively, I will be able to distract myself with like a TV show or a movie. If I have the energy, cleaning my room can sometimes make me feel safer in my body, because that's kind of what moral scrupulosity and OCD in general kind of makes me feel, is like not safe in my body. So cleaning up can help. Though generally, in order to fully distract myself, it has to be something I want to do, because then I can get engaged with it and like immersed in it. Talking about it definitely helps for sure, except like I mentioned, I have a hard time reaching out to people, and it's not like I can see a therapist like every hour of every day. And Canada does have like a free helpline, which I had never called before until like a couple days ago, and turns out they're actually quite nice, or at least that was my experience. If I had access to a pool 24/7, I would be swimming away all my problems, but unfortunately I'm allergic to pools. This one might be borderline unhealthy, but I do sometimes just like start getting rid of old clothes or old belongings when I'm stressed about something, which inherently isn't a bad thing, but because of my mindset behind why I'm doing it, it kind of can be a toxic thing. There's also this one thing that I used to do. Like people will just like give me their notebooks that they're no longer using anymore, and I just collect them. I'd take a notebook and I'd like scratch through the paper, and then it would get ripped up like this, and it feels like a good replacement for, you know, other things. Another really strange coping strategy of mine is literally pretending to fight off my bad thoughts with this sword. I'd also recommend looking up some resources that are like kind of specific to your area. If you just look up moral scrupulosity and like coping strategies, you'll find what you're looking for. One last coping strategy. What did I say? One last coping strategy. I think I said it right the first time. I listen to moral scrupulosity sometimes because I'm able to hear my own thoughts out loud and go, why are you thinking that way? If you have something similar, like if you want to write down in a journal what your thoughts are, actually, that's also a good coping strategy, is journaling. Like, putting your thoughts into art can be very helpful. So that's my video about moral scrupulosity, and it took a lot longer to film than I thought. I am so sorry. But thank you for sticking around to watch me ramble, and if you also struggle with moral scrupulosity, I hope that you can find some relief at some point, because it is really hard to deal with. Okay, goodbye.